Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the center, to First Center for Spiritual Living in New York City. I'm glad to see you all here. Today's title I borrowed from a really great presentation that was done by Dr. Bill Tolliver years ago. We're very lucky here in New York that we have the talks of some very great people. I have some of Reverend Wade's, I have many of Dr. Grayson's, and I have a lot of Dr. Barker's. And if you're really loving the teaching, this is a great place because we have such rich heritage, and we also have tapes and scripts of the life work of these people. So it's my pleasure to share them. We also, of course, our most famous student was Louise Hay, and we have a class every Thursday at 7. And that's been ongoing for me for probably 30 years. So it's helped literally tens of thousands of people at this point. Anyway, if you're watching us on Zoom, great. If you're watching us on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, either right now or in the future, it's always going to be a more intimate experience to watch us in the Zoom call. So that way you get to interact with us, you get to have a sense of community. It's really a far better way to join us, but I'm happy that you're finding us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Certainly it's great. Our reach is hundreds of people every week now, so that's wonderful. But do send us a message on to the center, and we'll find a way to get you onto the Zoom call. Also on the Zoom call, there's a part of our gathering every week where we try to have a moment or two for everyone to share who might want to. And that's really a nice thing, especially during and post-COVID times when many people are not getting out as much as they used to, let's put it that way. So I want to start with my own little treatment. Whatever it is that we desire already exists in consciousness. We draw upon our own consciousness now to expand our awareness, to include the good that is already there, waiting for us. We don't do anything with anything to anything, but rather we affect the consciousness of expansion. That all that the Father has or Spirit has is ours by right of consciousness. We give thanks for this awareness and celebrate it today in peace, in joy, and in love. And so it is to us. Let's continue on with our morning lesson and a little meditation here. The history of the planet is clear. Each succeeding generation pushes itself forward into higher realms of being. Just think in terms of your own life, what the changes. I mean, just in technology, in terms of the world getting smaller and the awareness that we have. It might have been a time where you just thought of your little town or your little community and you didn't travel far past it. I remember the great inventions. My generation, and a miracle was a fax machine, and today they don't even use them probably anymore. But it was a miracle to see a document come from California to New York in a minute or two. Now you can think of the information that's circulating and the closeness and the awareness. And it's really incredible. Human knowledge doubles every day or two now. And try to get your mind around that if you can. It's almost impossible. But human beings don't necessarily catch up with all of that. In many ways, the way people treat one another in the world is still pretty primitive. And we know that, and we're very fortunate, those of us who are in a place like this. So each generation, life evolves and unfolds. There's a push. All of our books say a push, the creative push. Spirit is longing to express in greater ways, and it does so through all of us, this cosmic urge that the authors have spoken about. is within each one of us, and the urge is to express more life, to feel more, to create more, to have more, I guess, if you choose to, but definitely to be a greater expression. And here we learn to align ourselves with that urge so we don't work against it. We learn to align ourselves with that urge so our challenges and our tasks are more easily accomplished. Because if you're working against life, you're going to get some pretty tough lessons. So we learn to align ourselves with the ideas, the qualities, peace, power, love, joy, beauty, and all of the things that you hear me speak of most every week. It's our natural birthright to expand and never contract. The universe doesn't go backward, nor should you. I don't usually use that word. It's our natural birthright to expand. Our expansion is assured when we commit to the process of expanding our awareness of ourselves, our lives, and our relationships to the divine. For in that relationship, my relationship with the divine, I become empowered. I become whole and perfectly capable of expansion. We hope, if you're working this teaching, that you're giving up any need within you to maintain a status quo, meaning you got to have everything be the way it was in 1950, 60, 70, 80, or 90. The church has to be the same. You have to be the same. If you're trying to maintain any of the status quo, it's futile, completely futile. We choose here to grow. We choose to evolve. The center, learning and listening and choosing to grow and change so we can be relevant to serve the community of the future. Many of the centers in the country are having a huge problem with this, and they will not be around unless they learn to change. We all want to change, right? We're trying not to just hang on to what was, because that means we're not open to what is. We choose in this teaching to be on the leading edge of personal and planetary change, transformation. We do this by being the very best that we can be at any given time doing anything we're doing. In that consciousness, our success is assured. Our power is creative, and our hearts are full of love. Today, tomorrow, and forever. So we let it be, and so it is. That's my little affirmative statement for today. As I move into the lesson, this was kind of a fun lesson to spend a couple days with. It was entitled La La Land, and I had to edit it quite a bit, but it was nonetheless fun. It was inspired by Dr. Bill, who was one of the best at the time. It seems every decade in religious science there were a few greats. I remember when I was a young person meeting Stuart Grayson and having a long chat with him, and I saw how excited he was about the teaching. And Dr. Bill would maybe be a decade later, and he was provocative, meaning he always tried to press our buttons to get us to think. So today, I'm going over some of his main points in a talk that was so well received, which was called La La Land. And that day he was speaking of his frustration with all the people that were discovering all these New Age practices. I mean, you know what New Age practices are. I don't even want to name them, where you're going here, there, and everywhere outside of you to seek your good. That's kind of New Agey. And, he thought many of these folks are living in La La Land. And I did look up the word La La Land, and I found it in the dictionary, the phrase. From North American English, it says, if you're living in La La Land, it means you do not understand what a situation is really like, and you think it's much better than it is. So if someone says you're in La La Land, they're probably suggesting you're living in some kind of fantasy. And Dr. Bill didn't really like people coming into the center. And entertaining a bunch of stuff that he thought was very silly, which he used to refer to as woo-woo stuff. And he said, I'm going to give you some of his words. He said, there's only a couple of things in life that really bug me or annoy me, beyond the normal stuff that bugs me and annoys me. He says, one is stupidity. He says, both in myself and in others, I really have a tough time dealing with stupidity. And he says, I don't really want to overlook it either. I don't want to die dumb. I don't want to keep doing the same stuff, because I want to use my life and use my power and not keep repeating what he called stupid stuff. The other thing that really annoys me, he said, is pink cloud metaphysics, which I call la-la land. It's kind of like people come into the teaching having explored a few books, and they might have gone and seen this person or that person and read their stars and done this and done that. And they've explored, and all of a sudden they come in here and they say, oh my gosh, I found a place that teaches what I think I believe. And they come to the first year classes that we teach, and they come up to me, the minister, and they say, oh my God, this is the greatest teaching I've ever seen. This is the answer to everything. I've believed in these things. I never knew there was an organized place like this, a center that taught this. This is wonderful. I'm going to take every class. I might become a minister. He says they'll say this all when I first meet them. And I'm going to join the church. There's a membership form, like Jimmy will send you a membership form. You can join our church too, virtually. I'm going to tithe. You can tithe. I'm going to volunteer. We need volunteers. So they say all this stuff. I'm going to be an usher. I'm going to help out in the office. I'm going to do service. And Dr. Bill said, and my intuition tells me that they're going to be the first people to leave. And invariably, they are. Not because there's anything wrong with the teaching, not because there's something wrong. No, but he said it's because there's something wrong with their perception of what we teach. See, in this teaching, you're going to learn you don't get something for nothing. You've got to kind of like be in it to benefit by it. If we hold up our textbook and say, this is it, this is it, this is the answer to everything, this is the greatest teaching in the world, he said that's making a big mistake. He says at that point we've somewhat become religious science fundamentalists. And then we're not much better nor worse than any other kind of fundamentalist. And the people who really feel that way really have never read the book at depth. They read it a little, they've skimmed over parts of it, but they didn't read it and they didn't embody it and they haven't taken it in. Because Dr. Holmes is very clear in the textbook about the nature of the teaching. He says, Holmes, it's all open at the top, and we take our truth from where we find it. And it's a science, and it's something that we can practice and prove. Don't take his word, my word, Barker's word, Judith's word. Prove it to yourself. Once you start working with it and proving it to yourself, you will want to be here, and you will want to work on yourself, and you won't want to be anywhere else because it's a community of like-minded people who are dedicated to their growth and evolution. All this means religious science, what it means from Dr. Holmes, as he described religious science rather, he said it's a correlation of opinions, the best opinions of philosophy, the revelations of theology, and the discoveries of science. All of that is in this infinite teaching. If we are not changing the teaching, then we're going to do what a lot of other religions have done. What we're going to do is it's all going to close in upon itself, and it's going to become insignificant or it's going to die out. Now, you might take a look at what's going on in the centers throughout the country and the world. They need to evolve, all of them. Same way New York needs to evolve, or it will close in upon itself. We need to be open and listen to the youth and the generations coming up. Otherwise, like all the others, we will not be around. I think the nature of metaphysics lends itself sometimes to unrealistic expectations. and a lot of la-la land type of thinking. Certainly, when we come in, we begin to study, and we begin to read the textbook, and we begin to listen to some of the class material. And we begin to find out that all you have to do is change your consciousness. Oh, that's what Louise Hay said too. It's all very simple. I'll say it again. When you come here for a while, you realize all you have to do is change your consciousness. Well, that seems simple enough. And we learn a formula. Affirmative prayer is a formula prayer. Think of it. Recognition, unification, specification, some people say declaration, thanksgiving, and release. Now, for any of that to be efficacious, to really work, you have to learn how to embody a whole bunch of things. But it's a formula prayer. Other ministers teach 7 steps. Some teach 3. Each are a formula. And at that point, it becomes no better or worse than a rosary if you're just doing it by rote. Something has to happen within that prayer process to make it powerful. Otherwise, it has no substance behind it. It's nothing but mouthing a bunch of words. It's like doing an affirmation. I often like to close the windows of my classes, he said, as quickly as possible for those who are going to attempt to escape once they find out it's totally up to them to change. And secondarily, we teach nobody's going to come and rescue you. There is no cosmic force that's going to open up the clouds and drop winning lottery tickets in your lap. There is no power to save you from the inevitable consequences of your own limiting beliefs and your own thoughts and your own actions. And he said, and all of this tries my patience immensely because people are looking for gimmicks, and there are no gimmicks. And he says, I listen to people walking around saying, you have to change your consciousness, you have to change your consciousness. And he says, that's really wonderful. Wow. And he says, and the people who are always preaching it are the people who are not usually practicing it. They've just got the vocabulary. And he thought, you can learn the vocabulary by getting the textbook and going to the glossary. But what you really need to do is change. I speak every week, Thursdays here, ask, what's it like being you? Because I'm wanting you to be mindful of your conversation that you're having with yourself, because that is the conversation that's creating your life. People do what they do. Some people say you can cure anything, and they think all you have to do is say there is no illness. That sounds simple, but it's a simple statement. The process doesn't work that simply. I remember Dr. Holmes saying, going around and saying there are no sick people doesn't make anyone well. Some people say there's nothing but peace and everything else is an illusion. Well, if that's the case, since the beginning of recorded time, there's never been a period of more than 20, 30 years of peace that anybody knows about. So if you're chanting peace and going around saying peace in the middle of turmoil, that doesn't necessarily do it either. So I think to myself, oh my gosh, do any of these people coming around have any grasp on reality? Seems like their grasp on reality must be slipping. They live in la la land, and so they think if you pray right to God, you're going to get whatever it is you want. You're going to get rid of whatever you want, and you're never going to have another problem. And then there's a problem. They can't figure out how metaphysicians die. You know, in our terminology, and he said, I hate it. I must have to tell you, it annoys me. We hear people say, oh, they made their transition as though nothing of significance happened. Making a transition or passing is significant. Most of you know this. The person is deceased. We don't do funerals with caskets in our centers. The person and the life that it would celebrate is not in any box. They are gone. So in this teaching, we want to get out of la la land. We want to get out of superstition. What is realistic is to understand that we are empowered, each of us, to grow, to stretch, to change our consciousness towards one of freedom instead of one of bondage. We are free to be empowered instead of being perpetually victimized. And we're free to deal with life and free to author our experience. Shakespeare said in Julius Caesar, it was with Brutus, men are sometimes masters of their fate. And the answer to Brutus was, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in the stars or the tea leaves or anything else, all la-la land ideas. The fault would be in ourselves, that we think of ourselves as underlings. Many of us since our childhood have been under some kind of strange illusion that to be a member of a religion of any kind, that you must adhere to all of its rules and regulations. You must be pious, you must observe, you must repent. We have none of that here in religious science. Or many of the religions will say you need to buy into or adhere to some kind of dogma. We don't have any of that either. And that you follow and obey all the prescribed things and rituals, and we don't have any of that either, by the way. And if you do all that, God will be pleased with you and you'll get what you want. We're here to tell you in this service today, this lesson, that there is no God who plays the role of a cosmic bellhop who brings you where you want to go. There's no Siri or Alexa that you can call upon. It doesn't work that way at all. Because when tragedy does strike or difficult times come, someone says when they can't find a reason for it, they conclude it's God's will. Now, we're smarter than that. We reflect a bit. We sit down, we think, wait a minute. What kind of God creates tragedy for people? What kind of God blows the roof off a synagogue or a temple or a church or what have you? What kind of God kills or allows to be killed hundreds and thousands of people? What kind of a God allows children to starve to death or allows cancer, AIDS, oppression, genocide, COVID to take hundreds of thousands of lives? What kind of God would allow the deterioration of the planet, our home? What kind of God creates poverty? What kind of God creates all these awful things that are part of our experience? There is no God out there that does any of this. If you live in deep connection with life itself, with spirit, with the earth, you know that. If you are philosophically orientated at all and you start doing any deep investigation, one has to conclude that we didn't need God's help in doing any of this stuff. We did it all on our own as evolving beings, as a species that's evolving. We haven't yet really become this unified consciousness on the planet Earth. I mean, people are pitted against each other all over the place, warring, as you know. But we're evolving towards peace and unity. We can't say God did all of this stuff. We did much of this as evolving beings. By not paying attention, maybe, by not growing. If you haven't grown, you make the same mistakes over and over again. By not expanding and by not accepting the responsibility for our own actions. See, he said, I like hardcore metaphysics. I don't like the la-la land variety of stuff. You know, the basics that were introduced beautifully years ago in the movie The Secret, I remember showing it in Florida for several weeks. It attracted everybody. The basics aren't enough. It's too simplistic. That's like Dick and Jane discovered metaphysics. Metaphysics 101. There's much more to it than that. Emerson, writing in the mid-1980s, was onto it when he said, we pay for everything in spiritual coin. He was talking about our personal and collective responsibility. Now, Emerson was hardcore. No wiggle room with Emerson. And that's it. It's tough. It's not an easy teaching. And it's the toughest teaching that I have ever found because it's easy to follow a bunch of prescribed rules in some of these faiths where someone says, hey, you've got to do this, you got to do that. You can't do this, you can't do that. It's in the commandments, it's in the scriptures. So-and-so said, and someone said, and all the rules say. And if you do this, you can't do that, they'll say. And if you do that, it's going to be the consequence of some other thing. And if you come in this teaching, if you come in here and you start really practicing the teaching for yourself, you're going to be inspired because you're going to realize that you're caused your own experience. And your life will start to get better because of you, really. You see, we don't have any place to send anybody when they're bad. We don't have any place to send anybody when they don't do things right. There's no rituals here to observe or to absolve you. No ways to punish anybody. And we don't have any desire to punish or threaten anyone anyway. We can't say something is going to happen if you don't follow the rules, because we have no rules. But we do have suggestions, right? Many life-giving suggestions. The first of which would be, please get honest with yourself. Thursday, when I asked the question, what's it like being you? Even if you don't answer on that call, answer it to yourself. I've been creating a mess, or I've been doing well, or whatever it is, get real. Which means start to become transparent. Quit living in denial and telling yourself a bunch of things that aren't true. Learn to have no hidden agenda. Every Thursday night in our class, our Hay and Holmes class, what is it like? What's that conversation like with the most important person, which is you? Get honest about that. It's really an important thing we do every Thursday night. Notice what you're spinning. You don't want to be in la la land, and you really don't want to be criticizing and blaming yourself either. It's a trap either way. You want to get honest, you want to know what you're up to, and you don't want to criticize yourself. That conversation is creating your life. You can perhaps, with a little help from us in our classes, and by joining in with like-minded people on the Zoom call, you might be able to change that conversation around so it's not self-perpetuating. Same song, different verse, a little bit louder, a little bit worse. To change that inner dialogue around takes dedication, it takes some effort. Some people, or some churches, some places have a mission of saving souls or saving someone. And I want you to know here, we don't have any hidden agenda like that. We're realistic enough to know that the God of love and the God of mercy and the God of justice and the God that is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow doesn't say, I love you today and I don't love you tomorrow, and I'll kill you tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. The God of compassion does not say, you are my beloved in whom I'm well pleased, and the next day have you diagnosed with some dread illness. We know in this universe of absolute power and freedom, illness exists. Poverty exists. Starvation happens. There's pain. And there's an infinite number of negative things that are possible, and there's also an infinite number of positive things that are possible. And it's not enough simply to start mouthing platitudes that this is God's will. There needs to be something behind what we say. When we're mouthing platitudes, it isn't really positive thinking. We teach here that we're responsible for our lives, including the tough things that come in. That doesn't necessarily mean that I created it, though most likely I played a part in it. And there's no blame to it. If it's there, it's there. I have to deal with it. Doesn't matter where it came from. If I got the measles, if I got COVID, or whatever I got it. I'm not going to waste any time blaming or trying to figure out where it was created, what people, what person. I'm not going to blame anybody. I have to deal with whatever it is. And I want to deal with it intelligently and hopefully get rid of it. Doesn't make a bit of difference where it came from. And hardcore pragmatic metaphysics says very clearly, I'm responsible for my life, period. There's no one to blame. Not my parents, not my grandparents, not my tribe. I really need to let go of all of that. I don't want to blame God. I don't want to blame anyone. This power gave me everything that it gave everyone else. I am made in its image and likeness, and I finally figured it out for me that God is not a noun, God is a verb. It's not a noun, a verb, it's an action, and its essence is alive, and its intelligence. And what it does is it gives. It is the givingness. It is that which gives. This energy is the thing that gives. This is how to think of this energy, this love that fills itself into all things. It is the givingness of the universe. Everything exists, and there's also laws that exist within this source that we observe and acquaint ourselves with, like the law of cause and effect. Or as Emerson said when writing The Law of Compensation so beautifully, that the law of attraction and the law of repulsion. We, as people, are good with some laws. For example, in New York, you would know not to cross the street when it's red and says do not walk, or you might be run over. If you drive, you know if you run the red light, the camera above will see you and you'll wind up getting an expensive ticket, or much worse, you could get hit or hurt somebody. So that proves to me that each of us are teachable. We can follow laws. I wonder how often most of us think about the law and the power that we have in controlling our own beingness. I wonder if we think about our ability to have a consciousness that to a large degree has dominion over our environment. I mean, you have the ability to have dominion over your environment when you're not in la-la land and when you're centered in truth. When you're centered in truth, you get to create a reality for ourselves that is co-creative with the divine ideal, peace, power, love, joy, beauty, wisdom. One that's expanding, and to look at the center of cause and effect. And of course, in hindsight, if we look most of the time, we can see very well the cause and effect that, in our life and in our relationships. We can see how we have drawn in the perfect people or the malady or even the circumstances that would have taught us something very important. Patterns of thought, we've had many. We all now know that we can use our mind to bring forth disease. We can learn how, if we can do that, we can learn how to do it differently, to turn the disease around and to cause healing to occur. All the recovery programs that I'm aware of have inventory steps, and I would suggest that it might be good for any and all of us to be mindful of what we are creating and thinking about. Notice, for example, little check on yourself. Are you stressed too much? Are you overtired? Are you worried? Are you overly critical? That was one of Louise Hay's big ones. Are you using the word should a lot? Because that would indicate you're overly critical. Are you angry often? And again, what is that inner dialogue like? Is it kind? Are you being nice to you? That's really important. Are you taking care of this vehicle called your body? Are you walking it at all? That would be wonderful. And ask yourself, what am I doing here? Is it meaningful? Am I in some way co-creating something good? And am I contributing to my health? Am I taking care of my body? And as I think about my relationships, what are they like? What can I do to improve them? One thing, if you want to improve your relationship, this came to Dr. Bill that day, is don't try to change anybody in any way. They're not here to do what you want them to do. No one's here to do your laundry or take care of you, do your dishes. If they're there, do them, or hire somebody to do them. Don't impose your needs upon others. This is not a teaching ultimately where you get something for nothing. This is not a teaching where you can come in on Sunday and get holy, 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 and get all prayed up. You just can come in the center, some people, and I've observed them over the years and be very pious and go out and live the way you've been living all week long. I mean, that isn't what we do here. This isn't a teaching where you can come in and sit down in class and occupy space and text on your devices and not pay attention to one another. It kills me. I watch everybody in restaurants, couples texting. They're not even communing with each other. I look in the congregation, people are got their devices in front of them. This teaching really is really a great thing. You know, it puts you in touch with all the power in the world that you possess. But in classes, sometimes people doze off, and then we have direct access to their subconscious. So, and then we can come back and haunt you. So this is a teaching in which there's hard work involved in changing your belief system. This is not pink cloud metaphysics. This isn't la la land or woo-woo stuff. So if you come up to me and say, oh, Greg or Dr. Bill, you're such a wonderful person, I would say to myself, this person's a little bit strange. So because if they think that, they don't know me too well. Or I would think, what do they want from me? You know, they must want something from me, he used to say. He said, I got better. I learned to accept their compliments. And he says, and if they come in and criticize you, and they always do, ministers, he says, I will thank them, and my healthy side will take it under advisement. He said, at this point, I'm pretty centered in myself. I don't take anything personally. I'm not going to let what anyone says rent space in my head and lose any sleep or make myself sick over anything. Our task here is always, mine and yours and all of ours, is to assume the responsibility for our own life. It's entirely up to us. And how do we do that? We do it first by giving up the blame game. Just stop. Whatever it is you're blaming, just move away from it. If it's not going to change, let it go. Let it go out of your life. No point in blaming people for being where they are. Just let them go and open up the door to something else. The second thing we do is give up the reasons, because reasons only help us sound reasonable. And they're usually not true anyway. The third thing is we learn to leave everybody the heck alone because they're not here to live up to our expectations. We don't live up to our own. How the hell can we make other people live up to our expectations? So I don't know why it would be appropriate to think that everyone's going to live up to our expectations. The fourth thing is that we have to learn to become givers. And this is not a pitch for money or for supporting the center, so everybody can relax. But if you want to, there's links here where you can. We have to learn how to become givers. It's a bigger idea than money, right? Thinking about, he was joking about money that day. He says, I'm thinking about inventing a machine that we can turn everybody upside down and shake them in their pockets before they leave, have a spiritual experience. That was his joke. He says, but we need to be willing to say to ourselves, I have some problems. You know, I have some areas that I need to work on. I don't want to be in la-la land. Pick one in order of importance. We all have something, right? And work on it. That would be Benjamin Franklin's approach. He wrote the first self-help book, right? You assume a virtue where you have it not. So pick some area where you want to improve in order of importance and work on it. It doesn't matter which one or where it came from. It really doesn't matter one iota, because if you're delving into the past, it's no guarantee that the future is going to get any better. And the next thing we might want to consider doing is getting rid of all the signs that we carry, that I'm oppressed, I'm a victim, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, I'm a survivor, I've got this and I've got that. You know, all these signs that we have. Today they talk about identity stuff. I don't want to put myself in any box of any kind as anything. I know that I'm an inlet and outlet of God activity, and I create a world. I don't need other people to give me labels. You know, I reject them. I don't want to know what men are, men do, or women do, or any of that. And Dr. Bill had many examples, which I'll not bother expressing right now. We want to get honest with ourselves, and we want to say, hey, wait a minute. It doesn't matter all these labels. Our parents did what they were supposed to do. They taught us what they knew. They taught us how to survive. It may not have been perfect, but it's what they had. They did a good job. Okay, you might say, it wasn't this. Forget that. Just stop. It was what it was. Now it's yours to deal with. In some cases, they didn't exactly have a star student in you or me, So the thing is, we deal with now and what's here now. So let's drop the past. Let's drop thinking of ourselves as victims of anything. Let's really consider dropping the limiting ideas. I'm a victim of this or that. If you're ready to. Now, some of you really have a need to think of yourself as a survivor of this or a survivor of that, and you engender poor me and all of that. And this church, this place is not going to take that away from you. I mean, it's entirely up to you to give up those things. You might, I had a student once who said, well, so-and-so abused me, and that's where she was at. And I couldn't help her with that. She died in a very, in a tough way. And she had a lot of resentments with her in her mid-50s over something that happened to her 30 years before. So, and quit the apologies tour. Stop apologizing for everything, right? It's not needed. And you don't need to make excuses for your life. No apologies are necessary either. Never waste your time apologizing. Your friends don't need it, and your enemies won't believe you. It's just a waste of time. Recognize always that you did the best you could with what you had. Don't keep on walking around and say, I'm in recovery, I'm this, I'm that, Because when you're really working this teaching, you're well on your way to being recovered. You can enjoy, if you want, living your life as a deficient person, neurotic, in pain. You can enjoy labeling yourself in all kinds of ways, but be prepared if you do that to suffer the consequences of thinking that way. Now, I'll tell you whether you, you can do it either way. We're not here to make you wrong, so I guess I'll stop with that. I hope to find in each lesson, Dr. Bill said, at least one button to push in everybody so that you can think about things and really cause yourself to consider what you've been up to. And you say, hey, wait a second, I'm like this or I'm not like this, and I can start something differently right here, right now. And hopefully you say, oh my God, I never thought about it that way. Hopefully you can think of, as you think of things, you'll come up with your own truth, not just the stuff that you had as a child that, in the 4 agreements, all the stuff that keeps being recycled and repeated. Hopefully you can do this so you can be in a new moment where you can create, your own reality, and sense your own perfection. And then in the end, when you think of this center here in New York, what we do and what we come as we come together every week, hopefully it isn't to come here and just get a pat on the head from Jimmy or myself or Judith. Hopefully you're coming here to stretch, to grow, and to learn. We share goals here, and we have a community of like-minded people who want to be reminded of who they are in truth. And they want to grow, and they want to challenge themselves to evolve. If you've been in any of our classes or on any of our calls, you got to know this by now. Jesus, by the way, never said, pet my sheep. He said, feed them. Okay? Hopefully you come here to get probed and to challenge yourself and to get excited about your own growth and possibilities, your potential, to learn how to use the laws of life so that we can act upon those laws and create experiences that are our creation or co-creation. And the ones that we can't create, that if we at least know that there's nothing that, we'll get to the point where we know that there's nothing that life can present that we can't overcome. Nothing, including death, which is on all of our schedules, by the way, not that we like to talk about it much. We don't get out of this experience alive, so we might as well have some fun while we're living. And here's the suggestion for the morning. And let's start making our religion a religion of celebration of our wholeness and our completeness, not a religion of morbidity. William James, who's in the front of most of our textbooks, I believe, or wrote of our textbook, described our religion as a religion of healthy mindedness, as opposed to a religion of morbidity. To not have morbid thoughts about the nature of the universe in which you live, but to celebrate the fact that you are one of the means of its perfecting itself. I will say that again. He said, celebrate the fact that each of you are one of the universe's means of perfecting itself. In my meditation or my statement this morning, I talked about each succeeding generation pushing itself into higher realms of being. And I ask you, are you one of the ones that are pushing life forward by means of you? Are you digging your heels in and resisting change? Are you saying, I don't want to go, I don't want to change, I don't want to, I'm holding on to everything. I want it to be just like it always was. If you're doing that, my God, nothing ever stays the same. Anyway, for people who dig in like that, it always gets worse. It doesn't get better. And as we grow, as we get better, we expand our own awareness, and we realize how difficult the teaching can be difficult, right? Because it's about changing our beliefs, and our beliefs can sometimes be tenacious. We're stuck in them. So I'm sure I've said something this morning that's pressed a few buttons and caused you to think, and if so, I've done my job. The purpose, though, is never to make you wrong, just the opposite. The purpose is to make you whole. The purpose is to have you challenge the belief in the light of truth, in the light of reason, in the light of intelligence, and not just to accept it because you were spoon-fed it as a child. You were spoon-fed a lot of things as a child that came back to haunt you. Some of you it gave real problems to, indigestion. In life, to be able to say, I believe it, not because it was taught to me by my parents. I believe it because it makes sense. I believe it because it's clear, it's concise, it's empowering, and it feels good. There's definite logic attached to my beliefs about myself and my world. Now, when you match this type of challenging against a consciousness that says, oh God, I'm a victim of life, the victim always wants to hold on to what he or she's been holding on to. It doesn't want to give up its story. And we're always talking about dropping the story. And when you challenge those beliefs and you say, I'm just so unlucky, that unlucky consciousness doesn't want to let go. It wants to hold on, so you keep repeating the negatives over and over again. And then you demonstrate the negatives in your life. And you conclude it must be the will of God. Just bad luck, bad parents, bad upbringing, bad teaching, whatever you want to call it. So our teaching to reverse all that is not an easy teaching. The reward for that struggle, challenging those beliefs, is being free, or being as free as humanly possible. Having an identity, of getting rid of an identity that says I'm not a worthwhile person, or getting rid of an identity that says I'm less than other people's, right? Or thinking other people are nicer, other people are better, other people have more, all that stuff you want to ditch and get rid of. Other people have better job, better this, better that. You want to get rid of all that also. And we want to realize that comparison to others out there, anywhere, creates a desire to either imitate them or to be intimidated by them. And both are disastrous to our own consciousness. Each of you are unique beings, your individualizations in the mind of God. There's nobody in the whole world like you. At your center, you are a being of light and love. And all of us want love. We want to be loved and love at least another person. We want to reason. We want life to make sense. We don't want to feel like we're victimized at the center, that we don't understand that the forces of the universe, but rather we want to know that we are in alignment with the forces, and that we're about upward growth and not contraction. All of us are unique and beautiful, and that uniqueness has absolutely nothing to do with your looks or your money, your job, or your age. It has to do with a sense of being in inner peace with who and what you are. Are you in peace with yourself, or are you living in la-la land? Are you mouthing it, or are you really living in connection and sensing it and knowing it? Can you answer the question in a kind and interesting way? This comes from Emerson when he says, "What you speak so loud, what you say so loudly I can't hear what you're saying." I'll ask each of you a final thought. What is it that's coming out of you each week? What are you saying? Is what you're saying to others and feeling the same thing? Is what you're doing and what you're believing the same? Or is there some kind of contradiction within you? Are you just mouthing the words, hoping that things will get better? Things don't get better with hope. No hope is needed. Hopelessness is realizing it's up to you. Hopefulness realizes that you have everything you need to do it. This wonderful teaching, and I don't know of any other teaching anywhere that celebrates your own divinity, your own potential domination of your environment, to become the very best of your ability. And there's no forgiveness necessary except in your own mind. You are either bedeviled by your thoughts or you're freed from them. And it's your choice. And then we struggle together for as long as we're together to try to expand out that way. We get to see ourselves more clearly, more lovingly, more powerfully, and more dynamically. So let's close this morning with the treatment. We give great thanks today for the inner awareness that we are practical, pragmatic, hardcore metaphysicians. We understand that the laws are mechanical, intelligent, and we understand and are understanding more and more each day as we use the law. Our understanding grows. And when the law appears to be limited, it's because we have limited it with our belief. We believe in ourselves. We believe in the eternality of life. We believe in the essential integrity and wholeness of every person made in the image and likeness of the divine. We believe in our own divine destiny, freedom under law, and our ultimate conscious union with Source, with God, today, tomorrow, and forevermore. And so it is. Thank you.